Welcome to the My Student Pilot channel, and in this video, we will be discussing the breakdown of cost to obtaining your pilot licenses. We'll examine the cost breakdown of the private pilot and the more advanced instrument rating. We'll also examine the cost breakdown of a professional pilot license, which is the commercial pilot license. So, let's first look at the cost of the most basic but most important rating, which is the private pilot license. The FAA minimum training hours to obtain the private pilot license is 40 hours, but the average training hours is more like 70 hours. If you live in a very busy and complex airspace such as Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Diego, DC area, or New York, you could be looking at 80 to 90 hours to get your private pilot license due to the very complex airspace you must master as a student to safely be capable of navigating through on a regular basis. Also, busy airports take longer for takeoff and landing, which adds to your training hours. Your training hours will be less in rural areas or training in areas of minimum busy airspace, such as in the Midwest. The average training aircraft, let's say a Cessna 150, generally costs about $125 per hour for the aircraft including gas. Other training aircraft that are a little bigger, such as the Piper Warrior or Cessna 172, will rent for $150 per hour. The average flight instruction cost is $60 per hour. For the private pilot, you will be training with your instructor for about 50 hours, otherwise known as 50 hours dual. You'll also pay an additional 20 hours of instruction for ground instruction. That includes pre- and post-flight briefing. So, 70 hours of instruction times $60 per hour equals $4,200 for instruction alone. Now for the total cost. 70 hours of aircraft rental at $125 per hour equals $8,750. Add an additional $2,000 for ground school, pilot equipment such as headsets, books, material, and FAA flight testing, plus the $4,200 cost of instruction previously discussed, and you're looking at a total cost of basically $15,000. This assumes 70 total hours of flight training including solo time. That's in a basic Cessna 150. Training in a bigger aircraft such as the Piper Warrior or Cessna 172 will cost you an additional $2,000. Now look at the cost of an instrument rating. This rating allows you to fly in instrument meteorological conditions, or IMC, which just means you are flying in conditions that are less than visual and require flying the airplane solely by reference to your instrument. In other words, flying the plane with no outside visual reference. This requires learning a new skill set from the private pilot, and the average training hours are 40 to 50 hours. You will be flying a more sophisticated aircraft that will rent in the range of $170 to $200 per hour. Training in a technical advanced aircraft with complete digital display, such as a Cirrus aircraft, can cost up to $260 per hour. The training is very instructor hands-on. You will not be soloing with the instrument rating like you do with the private pilot license. So, let's use $180 per hour for aircraft rental, times 40 hours, equals $7,200 for aircraft rental alone. Add 40 hours of flight instruction plus an additional 20 hours of instruction for ground, pre- and post-flight briefing for a total of 60 hours of instruction, and you're looking at $3,600 for flight instruction alone. Now add an additional $2,000 for ground school, pilot equipment, books, material, and FAA flight exam, and you're looking at a total cost of $13,000. If your flight school has a good flight simulator, you can reduce your training hours by 10%. If you plan on doing a lot of flying, and especially for business purposes, then the instrument rating is highly recommended. Otherwise, you will be severely restricted by weather conditions. The cost to obtain your commercial license is a little tricky if you're a low flight time pilot. Keep in mind that the commercial license allows you to be compensated for flying. In other words, you can fly people or property for hire. This license does not allow you to be an airline pilot. The certification to be an airline pilot is the Airline Transport Pilot License. So, with that said, how do you go about obtaining the commercial pilot license? First, the requirement is to have logged 250 hours of flying time to qualify for this license. If you're starting with just your private pilot license and instrument rating and trying to fast-track to fly to the airlines or some other professional flying job, you may only have about 130 hours. Let's say you got your private pilot license and then obtain your instrument rating. Your total flying time is only 130 hours. Then you must obtain an additional 120 hours of flight time to qualify for the license. The cost of obtaining these additional hours based on aircraft rental of $170 per hour comes to $20,400 just to qualify for the license. If you train at a Part 141 flight school, professional flight school, the flight hours required to obtain the license drop to 190 hours, but you'll be paying 30 to 40% more on aircraft rentals and instructor fees to get the license, so there's no easy way out. Now let's include the actual time to get the commercial license. You will be flying what is known as complex aircraft, or technically advanced aircraft, for about 20 hours of flight training. These aircraft can be quite expensive. Let's use $200 per hour as the bare minimum. Add an instructor fee of $60 per hour, and your training is $260 per hour for 20 hours. That equates to $5,200 for training costs alone. Throw in another $2,000 for ground school, training material, and FAA examiner fees for a total cost of $7,200 to get the actual commercial pilot license. So, as you see, when we talk about the cost of getting the commercial pilot license, the actual cost of training is relatively less expensive than most pilot licenses or ratings, but it's the cost to qualify for the rating that must also be considered. If you already have the qualifying flight time of 250 hours or close to that, then you only will need to spend about $7,200 for the license. However, if you need to build flight time to qualify for the rating, then you must consider the expense of obtaining those additional flight hours. So there you have it, the cost to obtain the private pilot license, the instrument rating, and a deeper dive into the cost of getting a commercial pilot license. Learn more about becoming an airline pilot at mystudentpilot.com. Also, please subscribe to our channel.